Good evening, everybody. This is the Raynham Board of Selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, June 26th. We are just returning from an executive session, and if you will all please rise, we will pledge allegiance to our country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to accept the minutes, please?
Motion?
Second.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Department heads, who is here this evening? Mr. Iafredi, please, sir.
Good evening, thank you. Bob Iafredi from the Building Department. I had dropped off a request to recommend the appointment of a new Assistant Plumbing and Gas Inspector. Name is Kevin Boyle. He's recommended by our Plumbing and Gas Inspector, Mike Doyle, who's known him for over 20 years and found him to be excellent plumber, a businessman, and a well-rounded individual. And we both have confidence that he will interact with the public and he will be a good addition to the building department. He will be needed just on special circumstances when Mike Doyle is not available, just like our previous assistant has been available in the past.
What the board wishes?
I would make a motion to approve based on the recommendation of our building inspector.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have another appointment. And this is an appointment for a special police officer. Do you all have it? Kelly L. Gormley. Is Kelly here by any slim chance? No, she is not. On 118 Ticket Road. Mrs. Gormley has completed a 376-hour basic reserve intermittent training academy and MCJTC, which is what?
Mass Criminal Justice Training Council.
Thank you, Chief.
Mass Criminal Justice Training Council.
Oh, thank you, sir. I have to tell these people not to use acronyms. Requirements to exercise police powers, and this is the request from the police chief, James Donovan. What say you?
I make a motion to approve based on the recommendation of the police chief.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. I have a note here for the yearly reappointments. What is your wishes?
Could we table that? I think there's a few that we need to check into. Just table that for the next meeting?
Is that the motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tabled. We have no public hearings this evening. Under new business, we have an earth removal application for Long-Built Homes. Is there anyone here?
I think he stepped out with the building commissioner.
He just walked out? Oh, Bob, I'm afraid he walked.
I apologize.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Lee Castagnetti, and I represent the applicant, Long-Built Homes, who is the contract purchaser of this, what is now an approved subdivision of 2 lots. It was approved in February by the Planning Board, and the Conservation Commission approved it last week for the work that needs to be done within the jurisdictional area. So we were here before you in connection with your regulations pertaining to gravel removal in excess of what needs to be removed for the strictly for the subdivision infrastructure. So we need to move some of the material off the lots. What's going to be created is the lots in addition to what's being removed to build the roadway servicing those 2 lots.
Okay. So the gravel that you already have there, you're removing it and putting it, or bringing it someplace else?
To Locust Street. We also
Bring it
own
to
the
Locust
subdivision
Yes.
that was formerly
Okay,
Bassett
now I
Knoll
get what you're
Estates,
talking about. Okay.
and which is now called Raynham Preserve, and we're bringing all of it
There was a
down there.
question in our mind. You all set? I saw you looking, I thought maybe somebody else was coming. There was a question in our minds as to whether or not you needed a gravel removal permit in order to do such a program like that. So what would you have any kind of a motion here to pass this over to Mr. Iafredi? And he
That's what
can
we
walk
just
you through.
discussed, yes. Yeah.
Walk you through it and see whether or not you
Yeah.
do. If you do, then we can go that process. If
Okay.
not, then you can come right back with this, okay? Is that
Sure.
all right with you?
Perfectly fine.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
thank you.
Motion?
to refer that to our building inspector?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Mr. Iafredi will take care of you. Peter King. Peter King is our in-house photographer, videographer.
Just wanted to present this before I gave it to the library. That's the photos from the Memorial Day Parade.
Yep.
And I also have a copy of that and a Blu-ray this time for the library.
Beautiful.
The parade went very well this year. Didn't have any big accordions in it, and everything went right along, and it's just about 2 hours from the time that we started till the time that we finished.
Well, that was, a lot of that was due to you sitting down with the committee and putting people where they belonged. So thank you so very, very much for doing that, Peter. And thank you very much for this. I will share that everybody will have an opportunity to see it. Thank you, sir. We
Thank you.
appreciate your service.
And if I could just add, Mrs. Smith, too, that obviously the chief is our parade coordinator and really appreciate all of his efforts. And also all of his efforts all the time, taking photos of everything that's going on in
He does.
town. Really appreciate it,
I have a
Chief.
whole album
Thank you.
full.
Yes.
And I thank you for it.
Madam Chair, if I might?
Yes, please, sir.
Where the next agenda item might take extensive time due to debate, perhaps the chair would be okay with allowing the animal control officer to give his report from 2 weeks ago to get them
Sure.
in and out of the meeting quicker.
Absolutely. Adam?
So I met Adam Perry, ACO. I met with Mrs. Riley this morning at her house to take pictures of the fence. And I did find a few deficiencies in the fence. I got some pictures for you to take a look at them. I think need to be rectified. And speaking with her, she did say that she was going to reach out to a fence company to get it rectified, and possibly thinking about an in-ground fence, invisible fence. So these pictures.
There's been no other incidents. They haven't gotten out again.
Nothing new yet, but the fence hasn't been fixed as of yet. There's just some like loose soil you guys can go through. But,
So, Adam, do you have a recommendation for the board? Do you believe that they've done enough right now to alleviate our concerns and your concerns?
right now, the fence isn't suitable to contain any animals. There's a slide in front of the fence right now
Yeah.
where just threw it up against there to keep the dog in. There's some loose soil where it looks like the dog had dug under. They just threw some loose soil there. I think she needs to reach out to the fence company and maybe lower this into the ground
Yeah.
or put some sort of wall under the fence to keep the animals in, but you guys can take a look at that. But that's all I have for right now.
Do you have a recommendation for us?
I think we should probably review this again to make sure that this is followed through with.
Yeah, you have no other complaints at this time, though.
Nothing yet, but
Yeah.
it looks like it just takes one loose.
It's not going to
One
take
loose
much
time.
to have them out again.
And Mrs. Smith, perhaps if we could convey to her that we are still concerned, and it is still active as far as we're concerned.
Right.
She is in the audience. If the board wants, we can perhaps have her approach.
Hi, I'm Ida Riley,
Hi.
and on July 3rd, the invisible fence is being put in.
Great.
Good to hear.
Do you, I know your husband, when he appeared before us 2 weeks ago, said that one of the other things that you guys were doing right now is bringing one dog out at a time.
Yes,
Is that what you continue to do?
yes,
And do you believe that that is sufficient?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Madam Chair?
Thank you. You got them under control.
They listen to me.
That grass looks pretty high, so I'm a little confident that they're not going to dig under it. Well, in the front, though, they'll get under that in a minute.
Yeah, that fence, people that put that inline fence, they're supposed to be fixing that because they made it glossy, so they're supposed to be
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
back to fix that.
That's a nice fence you put up there, though.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can just touch base, Adam, touch base with them and report back to us at our next meeting.
When will that be?
We meet every
Because-
2 weeks
Every
now.
2 weeks.
Because I'm going to be leaving to Europe.
So perhaps my suggestion would be, if you're doing it on the 3rd, we don't meet next week, so you could perhaps enter into correspondence with us that it's been completed, a receipt.
Can I get in contact with them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When that's
Oh, yeah.
done?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that way, we're not going to ask you not to go to Europe, so.
Okay.
Unless, and where are you going?
We're going to Greece and Portugal.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, maybe we want to.
Yeah.
We'll be in your suitcase
Yeah.
when you least expect it. Okay? That'll work out with Adam? Thank you so very
Madam
much.
Chair, I'm sorry
Appreciate
to
it.
interrupt again. The
That's all right.
victims are here, so I don't know if they had anything else
Do you
that
have
they wanted to
anything to
add.
say?
No.
Are you comfortable with that situation?
Yeah, no, I want them to take it seriously. They're acting like they trampled our flowers. Your animals killed my animals. So I just want it to be taken seriously.
I do. I would never want another animal to get hurt.
We're just tired of burying our animals, like our pets. We've had to bury an animal. And it's
Within 2 weeks.
been 2 weeks. It's very frustrating.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but can you get up there so that they can hear you at home?
Yep.
Because we can't. I appreciate your comments, but
No problem.
everybody's got to hear them.
Yep. I'm Dan Smith, 39 Lawrence Street East. But yeah, like I said, we're just very frustrated. Like, we don't feel safe. We are afraid to get more chickens because we're afraid the same thing is going to happen. We're being targeted. It's like these dogs have a taste for blood now. It just concerns us. It concerns us for small children in the neighborhood. It concerns us for our small dogs that we have. So.
Well, the dogs haven't hurt any person,
No,
right?
not yet.
It's just been the chickens that they like.
No, but I mean, they're coming to our house, so I just want it to be taken seriously that this is going to be alleviated. Because I don't want it to escalate to something like it's my dogs or children or something like that. So that's my concern.
No, and I hear your concern too. I mean, do you believe that what's been presented so far
Yeah,
is?
no, as long as they follow through and they're gonna do that fence, I just wanna feel safe in my
Sure.
yard again.
Sure.
Oh, I can't blame you.
So, if the board's so inclined, I would motion to put it on for another 2 weeks, at which time the ACO can give us a report based upon any of the additional improvements made by the dog owners, and hopefully at that point we can close this out.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming back. Okay, for the completion of old business, under our contracts, as you well know, we kind of erred on our contracts at last time and have been informed by the Attorney General that all contracts have to be voted on at a public session. So therefore, I'm going to ask for a motion on the contract for the building commissioner.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town planner? Oh, well, that's part of it, the building commissioner and town planner. That's one position.
Yeah,
That good with both of you?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a one-year contract.
Yes.
Thank you.
Highway superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town accountant?
A motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Treasurer collector?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Veteran service officer?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Health inspector?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the plumbing and gas inspector?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The town administrator and,
Have a statement I'd like to read, Mrs. Smith.
by all means.
At the May 29th meeting, I stated that it was my understanding that when Mr. Randall Buckner, our previous executive secretary and the town administrator for over 30 years, retired last year, the position was not posted or advertised, and our health agent and assistant town administrator, Mr. Flaherty, was asked to fill the position for 1 year as acting town administrator, which he has been doing, and we are certainly grateful for that. With that 1-year term coming to an end on June 30th, I propose moving forward with agreeing on a job description and then advertising the position. I would like to explain my reasoning. The town administrator's position is to the town of Raynham what the CEO is to a major corporation, or what the superintendent of schools position is to a school district. It is the key chief executive officer, the key management official overseeing the day-to-day operation of the town. In addition to all of the wonderful department heads, departments and committees and boards that the town has, and we do, that position is the key to coordinating everything so that the town works as effectively and efficiently as it possibly can. I do not offer this in any way as criticism of the job that the acting town administrator has been doing. The fact is that the position is just too important for the board not to publicly advertise and conduct a full search of possible candidates to assure the people who live and work in this town that we have done our due diligence. It is our responsibility to do that. I would offer that we can do no less without being negligent in our duty. Mr. Flaherty and anyone else who feels that he or she is qualified can apply for the position. And if we follow the process through, we will be able to say that we have found the best qualified candidate to serve the town of Raynham in that critically important position. I cannot help but compare the situation to that we faced on the Bridgewater-Raynham Regional School Committee when Dr. Forbes announced her intention to retire. We knew we had a very capable, very popular candidate in our assistant superintendent, but we also knew that we owed him, as well as the district, our efforts to conduct a search and ensure that we selected the best candidate. In the end, Derek Swenson was the unanimous choice of the specially appointed 10-member search committee and the school committee. But he stepped into the role in a better position of strength and support than he otherwise would have had because of the process, and we could ensure our constituents that we had done our job. Accordingly, I would like to make a motion that we extend for a period of 6 months the agreement with Mr. Flaherty as acting town administrator that was negotiated by the board prior to my service, although never made legal in open meeting, and that simultaneously we go forward with a full-scale search for the next full-time town administrator for the town of Raynham. As part of that motion, or as a separate motion if the chair wishes, I would also like to volunteer to serve as the Selectmen's liaison to a search committee to be appointed consisting of present and former town officials with a wide range of background experiences in town government. I believe that because I worked closely with the consulting company that guided the direction of the search committee that led to the hiring of Dr. Forbes initially, and then chaired and provided the coordination and direction to the search committee that then led to the hiring of Derek Swenson, I have the experience to do that without the need for any additional expense to the town. There is a considerable amount of coordination and planning involved, but I know the drill and I am willing to do that. If the board votes to approve this motion, I will come into the next meeting with an outline of the steps that we need to take to go forward with the search, along with a timeline. I therefore offer this as the motion, one motion, or as two, if that's deemed more appropriate. Thank you.
Is it one motion, Pat, or two? You want it,
I would just assume go with it as one motion.
okay?
I'm not seconding that, Madam Chair, but I do have comments.
It has to be seconded for discussion.
I'm not seconding it.
I will second the motion in order to allow you to have
Thank
your
you.
comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Riley. I got to be honest with you, I've been on this board now for 12 years, and the past few weeks is the first time in those 12 years I've not looked forward to coming to Town Hall. I believe some of the stuff that we've been doing has not been in the best interests of the town of Raynham. Certainly not the decent thing to do. Mr. Flaherty was not even given a heads up that this was going to be taken out a few weeks back, and I feel like take out politics, take out operations for a minute, and as human beings, we owed that to Mr. Flaherty to give him that heads up prior to it being brought out in open session. And that didn't happen, and I think that's unfortunate. The one thing I'll agree with in your statement, Ms. Riley, is that Dave has done a good job. But that's exactly and precisely why I support Mr. Flaherty. That's exactly and precisely why I named him as one of 3 votes, because nothing is done with one selectman. It takes a majority of the board. Some people don't understand that. But it takes the entire board to vote on something, and that's why I believe that board put Mr. Flaherty in that position. Prior to Mr. Buckner's retirement, he was not forced out. He retired on his own accord. He offered his assessment that he felt like Mr. Flaherty was competent, able, and at that point doing what he needed to do to continue on. I have with me here Mr. Flaherty's personnel file. There's nothing in it. When you go to fire somebody, there should be documented evidence of insubordination or incompetence, and that has not happened. And I think that's the most unfortunate thing. We can call it whatever we want to call it, but the bottom line is this vote, if it moves forward, is the termination of a loyal employee for 7 years. If you don't like the process, you put a system in place to prevent the process from happening again. But you don't move forward and terminate an employee who's provided 7 years of service to the town of Raynham, in my opinion, with distinction. And that's what's happening tonight. I found a Boston Globe article from 2012, and I'll circulate it to anybody who wants it. The title is Tough Jobs, Quick Exits, Boston Globe. Google the words town manager fired, and you'll get 80,000 results, ranging from bizarre to the more mundane stories of disagreements over tactics or personality clashes. I'm skipping a couple sections. Frisbee, who's an expert in this, says the common reason that managers say they lose their jobs is a change in the makeup of the elected body that appointed them. Other frequent reasons cited in her association's most recent member survey include political pressure, personality conflicts, and they blame poor fiscal conditions. Lower down the list, the managers say are performance issues. So this story is saying that more managers and administrators are being fired for the outside stuff, not the job performance. Certainly our financial condition's not in doubt here. Our bond rating just got increased. It goes on to say that nationally, the average tenure for a town manager or administrator is 7 years. In Massachusetts, the average is between 6 and 10 years. Dave's been with the town 7 years. Dave has not applied for other jobs. Dave has not attempted to move on. Dave, in my opinion, has offered his commitment to the town of Raynham. And when I hire employees in Raynham for the 12 years I've sat on this board, one of the things I try to gauge to the best of my ability is a person's commitment to the town of Raynham, because to me that is just as important as a person's qualifications and abilities. If you have people who show up at town hall every day who are committed to the town of Raynham and the people who live in it, then you have a better town. And that's why when I used to travel and go from town to town and talk about municipal government, the one thing I always said was the continuity in Raynham, the consistency in Raynham, and the fact that we've been so lucky decade after decade of being graced with employees who come here and stay here their entire career. That's why we are where we are as a town. Not because we change people every couple of years. No. It's because we've had that continuity, we have that consistency, and Dave's provided that to us. I also want to go on to say, we can do a nationwide search, and I have no doubt we'll get some good candidates, but we're going to pay them a significant amount more than what we're paying Mr. Flaherty. And here's just a sampling of the past 18 months in other communities who did these so-called nationwide searches. Hanover, September 2017, terminated. Oxford, April 2018, terminated. Stoughton, April 2017, terminated. Hamilton, April 2018, resignation termination because they couldn't come to terms on a contract that paid over $150,000. Nahant, March 18, termination. Mansfield, 3/2/2017, termination. Easton, February 2017, termination. Rockland, the town administrator, has just been placed on leave. You can do a search, and you can think you're bringing in the very best candidate, but the bottom line is you don't know what you're going to get. Dave has served this town for 7 years. We know what we're going to get from Dave, and that is commitment and somebody who shows up every day trying to do the best he can for all of us. Bottom line, Dave has not had an opportunity to solely be the town administrator because he's also had to be the Board of Health agent. We've unsuccessfully, and the burden falls on all of us, not been able to fill that position. 2 weeks ago, I brought forward a candidate that I feel fits that bill. My proposal is to allow Dave to serve out the one-year contract that the previous Board of Selectmen in good faith entered into, albeit incorrectly because it should have been done in open session. But that was the intent of the previous board. And I believe it's only fair to do it. And I believe that would give Dave an example and an opportunity to further demonstrate to this board and to the town of Raynham why he belongs in that chair right there. I think it's only fair, and I think it's the only right thing to do. Additionally, I had an opportunity, Ms. Riley, to study some of the stuff that you provided me, specifically the 3 job descriptions from Carver, Charlton, and Belchertown.
Those were examples.
Okay, but that's fine. Carver, their administrator was hired in 2006. One of the ratings on his performance was that they're critical of the strained relationship he has with employees. And in October of 2017, an employee alleged harassment. I'm sorry, that was Charlton, not Carver. In Belchertown, where's the other one? I have it somewhere. I'll have to go back to that one because I had it and I don't know what I did with it. So, in summation, because I can't find the other note, we can do whatever type of search that we want to do, and it might make some of us feel good, but we have gone this route before. We've done acting. Miss Riley, when you were on the school committee, George Gosconi was appointed without a nationwide search to the superintendent's position as well.
I wasn't on the board at that time.
You were, Miss Riley. He was appointed, and I have that note somewhere, too.
I wasn't take part in that discussion. I think it's when I first got on.
So,
And it was just acting because he was nearing retirement.
he didn't have the title of acting, though. We've done this before. The bottom line, in my position, in my opinion, is that we have a town administrator who's giving everything he's had to the town of Raynham, and we owe it to him to fulfill the contract that the previous board in good faith entered into. And I believe, in addition to that, going in any other direction is going to adversely impact every other department head. When you come to work, if you go to work and you believe that you're in an environment where you can't make a mistake or you're going to be shown the door, it's a terrible environment. You're not going to have any loyalty from your employees. And if they make a mistake, they're going to try to cover it up, which is going to create even more problems. We've always fostered an environment where our department heads can learn, can grow, can adapt with the understanding and expectation that they don't make the same mistake a second time. And so I'm going to close with this. I'm going to make a plea to my 2 colleagues. To Ms. Riley, I would ask that where you've been on the board about 75 days, that you allow Mr. Flaherty to continue on for the next year and give him a fair evaluation. And to Ms. Smith, the chair, I would argue to you that in the past, you've never voted to terminate anybody, regardless of the outcome. And tonight, to me, regardless of how we want to categorize this, it is a termination. And I would ask for you to continue to be consistent and not terminate Mr. Flaherty tonight. Thank you.
Very well said, Joseph.
I'm not going to go through and dispute every comment that Mr. Pacheco made, other than the fact that nothing was mentioned about termination. Mr. Flaherty was given a 1-year contract, a legal contract, as acting town administrator, and my point is just that we need to go forward with the search. That's the public way to do it. That's the correct way to do it. I stated, and I'll repeat, I do not offer this in any way as criticism of the job that the acting town administrator has been doing. Mr. Flaherty has every opportunity to apply for the position. My motion is to extend the contract for 6 months, which gives him another 6 months in the position, and then he can certainly apply for it. I just think we owe the voters, the people in the town of Raynham, to do due diligence and conduct a search. And it's not, I'm saying nothing about terminating anyone. It was a
You're
1 year.
terminating him.
No, we're not.
Well, we can respectfully disagree on that, Mrs. Riley.
I stay with my motion.
Madam Chair? At which time would you allow me to make a rebuttal or some sort of a statement? Because I've been quiet about this, and I just thought I'd like to make a short statement, but I don't know if it should be done in between a motion, within a motion.
I believe it's appropriate to let Mr. Flaherty speak.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel that I should make a statement regarding my position with the town of Raynham and how it has been affected this past month. I started as health agent in March of 2013. I was then additionally appointed as the assistant town administrator in July of 2015 to assist Randy Buckner as he approached retirement. In December of 2016, I was offered the acting town administrator's position. I would learn the job as town administrator starting in January of 2017 and prepare the next fiscal year's budget and town meeting warrant with Randy's help. It states clearly in the memo from him to me, section 4, probation period of 3 to 6 months following Mr. Buckner's departure, during which the board will have further opportunities to evaluate performance. Mr. Buckner retired in April of 2017, at which time I took over as acting town administrator in a probationary capacity. In the past 6 months in the 6 months probationary period that followed, I put together the warrants for a special and an annual town meeting, as well as prepared the budget for fiscal year 18. I also fixed the insurance mess that I inherited by getting existing town properties on the insurance roll, which they hadn't been, and removed vehicles from the insurance roll that had long been traded in for new. I conducted town business in a professional manner and had positive communication with the various town superintendents, vendors, and citizens that I interacted with. Then Health Inspector Sarah Holt was given the title as acting health agent, as she was to take over from me officially upon satisfactory completion of our respective probationary periods. After the 6-month probationary period was over in September 2017, Mr. Pacheco communicated to me that the Board of Selectmen wished to keep the acting title on my position, in other words, 6 more months of probation. I agreed without objection because I enjoyed the job and my co-workers and wanted this to resolve itself, which I believe it would. Ms. Holt, who was to be health agent, informed me on August 31st that she was resigning as she was moving to New Jersey. Since then, I have assembled another special and annual town meeting, as well as prepared new department head contracts and fiscal year 19 budget. I have participated in union negotiations with the various town councils and selectmen. I have updated the town hall telephone system, which resulted in a net decrease in cost to Raynham. I updated the town's website to make it more intuitive, user-friendly, and easier for the taxpayer. Again, this was a net savings to the town. I've also tried to fulfill all the duties of health agent with no additional stipend or salary so that the town would be covered. The Board of Selectmen directed me to advertise for a health agent, which I did so using 2 professional websites and the local newspapers. Responses were very limited, and the ones that did apply were not qualified. We re-advertised the position as directed by the Selectmen for an increased wage. The belief was that perhaps we would get a larger, more qualified pool of applicants using that tactic. We again received many unqualified responses. The one respondent that seemed to be most qualified was found to have misrepresented himself at the last minute. It was certainly not through lack of effort that we do not have a health agent at this time. We received a resume from a very well-qualified individual for health agent and interviewed him on May 29th with a follow-up interview by the Selectmen 2 weeks ago. My contract for fiscal year 19 was unanimously approved and signed April 3rd, 2018 by then Selectman Chair Karen Donahue. At the time, the town's prospects for getting a health agent in short order did not look good. I understand that trying to perform the duties of both positions makes it appear that I am part-time for both, but the case is I needed to make sure the town had someone in the health agent's position moving forward. This was never an instance in which the Selectmen, either individually or as a group, wrote me up for disciplinary action, insubordination, or dereliction of duty. I believe that I've been very respectful and professional with the Board of Selectmen. My relationships with town employees seem to be very positive, and many have reaffirmed that to me. While I have expectedly made some mistakes so far, they were minor and correctable and did not impact the town in a negative, lasting way. In closing, in light of this, I feel that to be threatened with the loss of my position after 18 months of being on the job and possessing a valid contract for the next fiscal year and trying to do the work of 2 people sends a very negative message to the department heads, employees, and citizens of Raynham. How many months or years do I need to have served to feel my position is secure? It seems that 1.5 years is not enough, even with a valid contract. I live 90 minutes away from here, yet I'm usually one of the first people here at Town Hall. I think this town is wonderful. That is why I've tried to give more than the typical civil servant would give. Raynham is worth it to me, but it feels now that Raynham doesn't feel I'm worth it. Thank you for your attention.
Appreciate it.
I could just point out one clarification. A contract is not valid unless it is voted in open meeting, and no one has the authority to sign a contract unless it is first voted on and they're authorized to do that in open meeting, just for clarification purposes.
All right, we stand still with a motion that was seconded. It in no way, as Ms. Riley has said in her statement, in no way is this saying David was fired. What we're doing is trying to correct something that was incorrect to begin with. I'm going to call for a vote, and that's it.
Madam
No,
Chair,
yes, go ahead.
if I could just clarify, what are you saying needed to be corrected that was incorrect?
It was not voted on in an open session.
The contract.
Yes, sir.
But that's not what we're disputing now, because what we just did was we voted on every other contract that was previously acted upon with no changes. The motion at hand is to significantly change the contract that was previously entered into, unlike every other contract we just voted on. And again, essentially, we can call it whatever we want, tomato, tomato, Bob, Sue, Kelly, Ellen, but it's a termination of Mr. Flaherty. That's what we're voting on right now, Madam Chair. It's not to correct an error that was made. We just did that. The motion on the table, I want you to be clear, Madam Chair, and everybody at home and in the audience, the motion is to essentially terminate Mr. Flaherty. We can call it whatever we want, Ms. Riley. I didn't interrupt you, and I would ask for that same respect in return. It's a termination of Mr. Flaherty. He was offered a one-year contract extension consistent with what we've done in the past and every other department head. We just voted on 6 department head contracts that were previously voted on to rectify the issue that none of us were aware of. We are not voting on the same thing for Mr. Flaherty. So let's be abundantly clear with that. Let's call it what it is. It's a termination of Mr. Flaherty because somebody doesn't like the process by which he was selected and did not control. But you and I were on that board, Madam Chair, and we both supported that process.
I could add, Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Just a question, why was the position never advertised when Mr. Buckner retired, and Mr. Flaherty and anyone else could have applied for it at that time?
I can speak to my reasons, I can't speak to the chairs. I felt that when you have an ability to promote within, which is what we've done across the board, Chief Janice, Chief Donovan, Town Clerk Sylvia, I hope you don't mind pointing you out.
That's fine.
We have always promoted within when we felt we had a qualified candidate in-house, for 2 reasons. 1, we knew what we had, and 2, you ask any successful business person, and the same thing applies in the public sector. Continuity. When you're replacing people and you have a revolving door, you lose productivity, and when you lose productivity, you're not maximizing your revenue, or in this case, taxpayer dollars. Mr. Flaherty showed consistency, continuity, and commitment. 3 C's. I didn't mean to do that on purpose, but it sounds pretty good. Mr. Flaherty, Mr. Flaherty in his 7 years has done nothing, and I'm reiterating this, nothing to warrant the treatment that he's received from members of this board. He's done nothing to warrant not having his contract renewed, just like we did with every other department head. If you don't like the process, I will second any motion you want, Ms. Riley. If you want to say from now on, any posting we have to do, it has to be posted. But to put him out on the streets after he served the taxpayers of Raynham for 7 years with honor and dignity, it's disturbing.
Good job, Bill. Good job.
If I was treated like this, I wouldn't want to come back. I'd be sending my resume to all 350 other cities and towns. And if I was every other department head, I'd be doing the same thing.
Just a point of clarification, too, you mentioned about, I think, salary. According to the MMA, the average salary for town administrators is between $85,000 and $100,000. I think we pay the very top end of that.
We do not, Mr. Riley. I've never seen a town in Massachusetts pay what we pay Mr. Flaherty. He doesn't even make $100,000. If you look at every single one of the towns that you sent me and the towns that I listed in my list, they're in the 150 range. Easton was almost $200,000, and then they fired him, which we might have here. If he wasn't so classy, I'd have a lawyer here tonight if I was Mr. Flaherty. He could be on the hook to sue us. No, let's be real here, though. I've given everybody an opportunity to speak. I don't talk over anybody, and I just ask for the exact same courtesy back. He could sue. Whether he'd win or not, I don't know. But if I was him, I'd have a lawyer right in the audience right now. That's number 1. Number 2, I have never seen a town administrator in Massachusetts get paid $80,000. Never. Easton, it's 5 minutes away. We have a border with them, almost $200,000. Rockland, $160,000. You tell me anybody who's going to take this job for $80,000, and I'll give you $100. Yeah, I know. You know how cheap I am.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, that has been. Yeah, everybody's laughing. Mr. Shivo knows I make him buy lunch all the time. The bottom line is, we have never paid, we do salary study after salary study, and that's one thing that I've accepted, and all of our department heads can say the same thing. Mike's nodding in the background. They come to me and ask for more money. I said, no, the privilege is for you working in the town of Raynham. We are at the bottom of the barrel across the board. Our town clerk's been with us 40 years. There's town clerks who've been on a job 4 minutes making more than her. There's town administrators who've been on the job 12 seconds making more than Dave. They make more than Dave in his sleep. And one of the other examples you gave, the Carver Town Administrator, he's well over $100,000, and he also has outside employment, which has been very criticized in the town of Carver. Dave, do you have outside employment? No. Is this your only employment?
Yes, sir.
Have you applied for employment since you've been with us?
No, there was a job that enticed me in my hometown as assistant town administrator for over $90,000.
For
And
an
I thought about it,
assistant's
but I like Raynham, and I'd rather drive an hour and a half than 5 minutes for Raynham.
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I must have misread that contract, $1,800 a week. Comes to more than $80,000.
He makes, I told you, he makes under 100,000. I never said 80.
Oh, I thought that price, that was mentioned.
No, I never said that. I said if you
Just
find
for
somebody who makes 80, I'd give you 100.
Clarification purposes, no one here, at least I have not said anything negative toward Mr. Flaherty whatsoever.
I didn't say anybody did. What I said was, the previous board, in my opinion, and based upon past practice, and I emphasize that, italicized that, and underline that, based upon past practice, entered into a contract in good faith with Mr. Flaherty to extend his term for another year like we did with every other department head. And every other department head was given a renewal tonight except for Mr. Flaherty.
There's the difference. Every other department head was not acting in an acting position.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with you, but to me, there's no deviation. The fact is, the previous board entered into a contract with him for another year. I don't care
It
what
was an
prefix you
illegal
have to it.
contract. That was not a valid contract.
Madam Chair, I don't know if anybody in the audience would like to speak, but we have a larger than usual attendance.
We do have a larger than usual attendance, but does anybody wish to make any comments? I don't know where it's warranted that,
I would like to.
Street East, I'm a former selectman. I signed Mr. Flaherty's contract on 4/3 in good faith that he did a great job. We had a discussion in open meeting and in executive session. We had bullet points for Mr. Flaherty to fill out on what he thought he needed to improve on, what he thought his assets were, what he thought his weaknesses were. We, as a board, came together and did the exact same thing. We presented everything together. And as that meeting went on, we all determined that we thought Mr. Flaherty, moving forward, did a great job, and he could do both positions well. We also did this in the past with the planning department and downstairs when we had the two positions merge again. We did not post that position as well then. But we are a great town that can do multiple things. And I really hate when people say we have part-time people and part-time this and part-time that. We're not part-time. We have great people that do a great job, and that's why we can do this. Mr. Flaherty does nothing wrong. He's a phenomenal person. He makes the town hall happy. He makes everybody work harder. He has a great work ethic. And yes, he does drive 90 minutes every day to come here. And it breaks my heart that we would even consider doing this to him. It's a travesty, an absolute travesty. And I am disgusted with the town right now. Let me tell you that. I've never been so upset in my whole entire life. This is beyond anything I could ever imagine. Thank you.
I would just
Madam Chair.
respectfully like to request at what meeting it was discussed in public, because I've gone through all of the minutes and watched videos and never saw any discussion in open meeting.
I don't know the exact date, but I know it was brought up. We did it in executive session, and we did it in an open meeting. When you look at the open meeting law, it says you have to discuss the contracts. It says nothing about signing them. After every meeting, we say we are going to adjourn and sign contracts. We're going to sign warrants, we're going to sign this, we're going to sign that. That's what we say, and that's what we did. We brought it up in open meeting, and then we signed it.
Just for clarification, the open meeting law very clearly states that contracts with non-union personnel can be negotiated in executive session, but must be voted in open meeting. And it has to be, you can't just say, we're going to sign contracts. It has to be identified. It's all part of transparency, which is so important for the public trust.
So then that means nobody's contract in the last 10 years is valid,
You're absolutely
correctly?
right. Yes,
So
because
nobody
it's
has a
been done
pension,
correctly.
nobody has
That's why
health insurance, nobody has anything. You want to open up that can of worms? Really? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
I didn't create the open meeting
No, you
law.
didn't,
This is-
but you're opening this can of worms, and you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Absolutely wrong.
excuse me,
I believe what we're trying to do is take corrective action now, which is why we just voted those contracts in an open meeting.
Mr. Shio.
as long as you're not going to yell. I'm not gonna put up with yelling.
Okay, so, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
And-
welcome,
And
sir.
obviously, there's a lot of, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of information, so it is a very complex thing. I guess the first thing I would say is this. I'm confused about why the board initially approved the other positions that needed public approval, and why not this one? I don't understand. I mean, there must be, I'm sure there's some other reason, but, when we talk about transparency, I'm not so sure. I get it. I really don't get it. So maybe when I'm through with just my few comments, Madam Chair, you could help explain to me and maybe to the rest of the group why the board, voted to approve all those other contracts. It was like about a dozen of them, and why not this one? So that's a big question I have, Madam Chair. Let me go back. I was one of the people that hired Dave 7 years ago, and we did a lot of interviewing. And I have to tell you, he's a pretty talented guy. So I feel very honored that I was part of that original group, Dave, that brought you on board. So I want to say that the opening comment by Selectman Ms. Riley is that, that the town administrative positions like a CEO, it's like it's like a president, it's like a general manager. Actually, I have been a CEO, and I have been a president, and I have been a general manager, and I can tell you that's not what this job is. This job reports to you all at the desk. You have the authority, not him. He is subservient to you people. So to call him a CEO is a real push, and I can say that based on very real practical experience. I was a CEO of 300 people at one point in my program, so I understand what that job is. So, the thing that I don't quite fathom, and having put aside the fact that all these other contracts were blessed by your public vote and not his, the thing I don't understand is there's been no complaint. I don't think there's been no public complaint that we're aware of. There's no complaint by any of the employees. In fact, I still have some contact with members of the town hall, and he's got a pretty good reputation. Actually, I'm a little jealous. You've really moved things forward a little bit. So he's got a good reputation amongst the staff, which is not a bad thing, really. So it's hard to envision why we'd want to cut, bait with somebody that's got a pretty good track record. I'll tell you this, I'm no lawyer, and so I don't want to pretend to be, but if he's got a signed contract, I'd be a little nervous about that. I don't care what the circumstances are. If the contract was signed by officials, I would highly recommend, no matter what the qualifications are, and I know I've been through a lot of contracts myself, if he's got a signed contract and there's no real valid reason, performance-wise, I say, why would we pull the plug at this stage of the game? It's just there's no rationale for it, especially with the other work that you'd already done earlier. I would say that the signed contract could very well abrogate any subsequent change. I think it would abrogate it, I'll be honest with you. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I only give that as a participant and as a person who really, truly cares about the town. And I think that everything that Selectman Pacheco said, and I understand Selectman Riley is looking to make things, let her correct and let her perfect. But I think one thing I learned in all my years as an executive is that there are occasions when rules need to be changed for the circumstance. That there are circumstances that allow one to make exceptions. And if that's what this requires, and you already made exceptions on 12 other people, I don't get it. What's this guy? What's his problem? I would like to know what his problem is compared to the other 12 that you approved. I'd walk away feeling very good. But anyway, Dave, the work I did with you, you're top as far as I'm concerned. I work with you in a professional way within the town. I would certainly support you, and I hope that the other selectmen see the value in you as a loyal worker who has good reputation. And I just think that I don't know why we would go through that. I don't know why the board doesn't have the authority to say, look, there's a signed contract, let's live with it. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I hope I didn't yell. I was just trying to talk into the mic.
No, we're very soft. Very good.
Mrs. Smith, if I could, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Shavo.
Yes.
There is not a, just for clarification, there is not a signed contract, and I did check with legal counsel, and according to a ruling from the Attorney General and the open meeting law, that if a contract is not voted in open meeting, it is null and void. So there is not an existing contract right now. And I think the reason why that particular contract was not voted is because that was acting. The others were not in an acting situation, they were full positions. But I would consider, based on the comments, unless you want to comment first, Mrs. Smith?
No, go ahead.
I would consider, have we done an evaluation, a public evaluation of Mr. Flaherty?
No.
While he's been in the position, which also is required open meeting according to the open meeting law, then I would withdraw my motion and make another motion that we extend the contract as acting town administrator for 6 months with an evaluation at that point, which would obviously be a public evaluation. And at that point, if the board so decided, we could go forward with the remaining 6 months on the year.
Well, that's more reasonable.
I'm not seconding that, but I have discussion.
You have who?
Discussion. Oh, yeah, Madam Chair.
Go
We're going to have this debate. When this gets brought up, there's not going to be one iota of a second of me not saying everything I have to say, Madam Chair.
And that's what you're here for.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that.
And I will second it to give you the floor.
Thank you. Appreciate that. To do the right thing, to be what we have always been as a town, what I think we should do, as I said, and I'll say it again, is to give Dave his one-year contract. And I would add in it a monthly evaluation if Miss Riley wants. But I believe this man deserves the one-year contract that the board previously entered into. I don't care if you want to evaluate him weekly, Miss Riley, because I am quite confident he can live up to our expectations, especially if we move forward and fill the health agent's position and allow him, like we did Mr. Buckner, to only be the town administrator. So forget about these 6-month contracts. I don't know anybody who gets a 6-month contract. It's not fair, and it's no way to live. And Mr. Flaherty deserves more of an investment from us because he's giving us an investment. And so what I would like to see happen is a motion on the floor, and I would make it, but I'd love to see Ms. Riley make it, for a one-year contract and regular evaluations by this board and whatever said Ms. Riley sees fit of Mr. Flaherty's contract. And I would even say by March 30th, we can make a decision if we're going to move forward with him or we're going to post and go out. And I won't object at that point, but we owe him that courtesy, that decency, and we owe the people of Raynham continuity and consistency.
You want to make that in the form of a motion?
Well, there's a motion on the floor, so I can't.
Well,
Mr. Tixer?
Yes, John Teixeira, 122 First Street. I just have a question for the board. I hear everything that's being said, and to be honest with you, I agree with all sides of it, to be honest with you. But I'm puzzled. When we renewed his contract, I mean, you just mentioned how you were put in a probationary position. Well, when the 6 months was up, why did we renew him as an acting? Why didn't we say he's finished his probation, he's now the official town administrator? Why didn't we do that?
Well, we tried, Mr. Teixeira, and there was a member of the board who made a request at that time to continue on in an acting capacity, and I can tell you that I obliged one of my colleagues' requests, which is what Mr. Flaherty alluded to before. I, at that point, exactly wanted to do what you just said, because I felt like it was the prudent thing to do.
Sounded like that was the plan.
But a board member objected to it and said, I want to continue to evaluate and keep him acting. And so as you heard Mr. Flaherty say, Mr. Teixeira, he said that I called him because I believe I was chairman at the time and relayed that on to him, and at which point he agreed. So that's what happened.
Okay.
We did try, though.
Okay, thank you. It's just, I couldn't understand why you hadn't.
There's a motion on the floor, Madam Chair.
yes, there is. Do you wish to change your motion, Pat?
Do you wish to input it on it, Mrs. Smith?
sorry, I didn't hear.
She wants to know if you have an opinion.
You want to comment?
Well, I do think that what Mr. Pacheco had said was quite reasonable. So therefore, I certainly would entertain his motion as he so stated it and do the evaluations. We have not done a physical evaluation, so that gives Mr. Flaherty the opportunity to hear if anyone has any more or any objections or comments or whatever regarding the job. And I think it's only fair at this point in time to do that.
What was your motion again?
My motion would be,
Suggestion?
like we did with the other ones, Ms. Riley, is to give him a year contract as was previously committed to him. And I would stipulate to you whatever type of evaluation process you want to put in place, weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, daily, I don't care. But he deserves to be here for a year and evaluated fairly and equitably.
If you want to make that motion, I would consider it.
I'll make that in the form of a motion, Madam Chair, that we renew his contract for a year, consistent with every other department head. And I would stipulate to Ms. Riley that we would do at minimum a quarterly formal evaluation of Ms. Flaherty. And if Ms. Riley was so inclined to increase that, I'd oblige her on that as well.
No, quarterly evaluation would be fine.
And leave it as an acting position as
Acting.
opposed to.
We can call him whatever the board wants to call him.
We're not calling him anything, except for dinner.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Speaking of aye, would you give us your report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ongoing projects, the North School Archive Room is done. I haven't heard back from the contractor about, we approved some minor bathroom finishing touches. That's all that's left. I supplied you folks with a spec sheet on the ACO, Animal Control Officer's vehicle. I'm working with Combis right now, which is a state program that authorizes towns to use funds without going through procurement. And I have, for your approval or input, that vehicle that they supplied to me. I attended some procurement training in Boston yesterday. As acting health agent, I followed up on 4 Chapter 2 housing complaints. I performed 2 Title V system inspections and processed 4 Title V permits for construction. The health inspector, Brian McCracken, is up to speed on almost every type of inspection to perform, doing a great job. I submitted Raynham's EPA DEP stormwater report, and we are in substantial compliance now. Just a reminder, I'm not sure what the status is, but Raycam, I believe, needs another board member. Contact Kevin Ellis if interested. And the Historical Commission needs 2 more members. Contact Pat Riley if interested, and the contact information is in the Selectmen's office. Upcoming projects and things to be aware of. The next Selectmen's meeting is July 10th, not next week, at 7 p.m. Next department head meeting will be July 19th at 9:30. And Southeastern Mass Health Group meeting will be July 26th in Seekonk. And the Raynham Fire Department Safety Committee will be July 10th at 6:30 p.m.
Any questions?
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Selectmen's report, anybody have anything?
Very brief, Madam Chair. I want to first wish everybody a happy and safe 4th of July. And I also, just for a minute, want to offer my condolences. Paul Sullivan, who's a former selectman and town administrator in Bridgewater, has passed away. I got to know Paul as a selectman, but also when I worked for Dave Flynn, and Paul was a true gentleman and somebody who I think helped redefine municipal government in Massachusetts, and so my thoughts go out to his family and also to the town of Bridgewater, because I think they were his extended family.
Thank you. Pat, do you have anything?
Yes, it said that I was going to give a brief report on the Selectmen's training that I attended. As you may know, the Massachusetts Municipal Association is a nonprofit, nonpartisan association that provides advocacy, training, publications, research, and other services to Massachusetts cities and towns. The Massachusetts Selectmen's Association is one division of the MMA, and on June 9th, they hosted their annual training for newly elected board members. Veteran members were also welcome to attend for a refresher. In all, about 50 members of the boards of selectmen from across the state, along with about 10 MMA staff members, attended the training held in Natick. There was no charge for the event, which included workshops on the open meeting law and public records law, municipal budgeting, and just navigating the role of a member of the Board of Selectmen. In addition to the information provided, what was particularly valuable was just an introduction to the whole range of resources that are available throughout the Commonwealth, including through the MMA and the MSA. There really is a wealth of information that cities and towns can access for their benefit at no cost. Much of the focus and interest was on the open meeting law, which obviously has become much more extensive and much more closely monitored and enforced than ever before. Angela Achu, president of the Massachusetts Municipal Lawyers Association, was the guest speaker on the topic. As an example, she explained about the recent ruling of the Supreme Judicial Court relative to all public bodies evaluating the professional competency of an employee in open meeting. Not only do such evaluations have to be done in open meeting, but the opinions of the individual evaluators cannot even be shared in advance of that open meeting discussion. In that instance, 5 registered voters in the town of Wayland had filed suit in Superior Court to challenge the procedure by which the Board of Selectmen conducted the performance review of the town administrator. The board members had submitted individual evaluations to the chair, who created a composite evaluation and emailed it as an attachment to each board member with an agenda packet before the meeting. The board then reviewed, discussed, and approved the composite evaluation at the open meeting and then released it to the public. The Superior Court held that the board still violated the open meeting law because the performance evaluations contained board members' opinions which must be deliberated in an open forum, and the Supreme Judicial Court agreed, citing the need for transparency in government. The SJC's statement was that it is essential to a democratic form of government that the public have broad access to the decisions made by the elected officials and to the way in which the decisions are reached. Whereas before the emphasis might have been on the need for the decisions to be made in public, it is now considered equally important for the full deliberations of the reasons for those decisions to be made in public as well. The byword really is transparency. It all comes back to that. A good reference is the Attorney General's open meeting website. We can take that to heart if we're going to do future evaluations. Also, Sean Williams, Public Records Access Officer for the City of Boston, then discussed aspects of the public records law and how extensive that is, pointing out that everything you make or receive in your capacity as a public official is a public record, unless it falls under very specific exceptions. Minutes of meetings are permanent documents that must be retained, period, and the town has the retention obligation. Emails are considered to be no different from other records. And again, you can get specific information from the Attorney General. Other discussion focused on budgeting 101 and how even though a municipality may have finance committees and or other personnel who play a key role in that, the final responsibility is with the Selectmen's Office and the Board of Selectmen, both when it comes to budgeting and setting the tax rate. So Sandy Pooler, Deputy Town Manager and Finance Director for the Town of Abington, presented the budget basics for new selectmen, emphasizing that the budget roles for selectmen include development and implementation of policy, issuing consistent budget guidelines, taking into consideration available financial resources, giving input to the budget process, reviewing the budget requests, and understanding Finance Committee's positions. And I just really received a wealth of information. I think we ought to take advantage of the trainings that they offer and the different meetings that they have. And I would like, if we could, moving forward, to put on the agenda for our next meeting, since we'll be starting a new fiscal year, July 1st, some goals that we could come up with for our office. And going forward, I know Mr. Pacheco previously mentioned one is a complete review and updating of our bylaws. That certainly would be one. And I think we could come up with a few others that would serve the town well. So I'd ask that be on the agenda for the next meeting. Thank you.
Right. And thank you for taking the time out of your time to attend that session. I'm sure it was very helpful.
It was, thank you.
Moving forward, we'll all benefit from it, I'm sure. Did you have something you were going to say?
No, I'm set.
You're set? Good. For now. I have a letter here that I'm going to read to you only because we have no action on this letter, but I just want everybody to know. And that this is a letter that went to our town clerk. Dear Marcia, it is with a heavy heart that I need to inform you that the purpose of this letter is to offer you my resignation as Assistant Town Clerk. I have accepted the Assistant Town Clerk's position for the town of Easton. This position has given me invaluable knowledge and experience in municipal government, and for that I am very grateful. Please know that this decision was a very difficult one to make. I value the time that I have spent working for the town of Raynham and the friends I have made during the last 8 years. Many of these friends I consider to be like family. It is my intention to still be an active member of the community and in the future would appreciate being considered if a vacancy on a volunteer board or committee opens up. I wish nothing but the best for your office, and if I can be of any assistance to you at any time in the future, please do not hesitate to contact me. Respectfully yours, Pam Manconi. I do not have to accept this because it is not from our board, but I do wish Pam the very, very best, and I'm sure that it was a difficult decision that she did have to make because that is a great office, and she has worked very, very well. So thank you for the letter, and any comment?
Make a motion to thank Pam for her service and wish her well.
Perhaps if we could send her a letter, that is a great
You can
loss
do
to the
that,
town.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I just have one?
Absolutely, sir.
Since you indulged me before, I'm going to ask you indulgence. I have actually two other comments to make, and it just occurs to me, after you took your vote on
Yeah.
the town manager's contract. So the contract is for a year, and he's going to be evaluated according to the agreement you made, which is, that's fine. At what point in the year do you give him the decision to renew it? In other words, I think something that needs to be considered here, I mean, if we're talking contracts, and that is that, it's not appropriate on the 11th month, third week, to say, hey, your contract is going to be renewed. There has to be some sort of lead leg time. And I would just ask the board, I mean, this is, your concern, but I would think that, it's appropriate to say in 6 months, you decide whether you're going to renew it or not, because it's only fair to the person that if he or she doesn't know that it's going to be renewed, it gives them an opportunity, to look around. You're talking about continuity, it's their continuity. So I would hope the board would consider, making a decision, whatever that decision is. It's, some months, like 6 months ahead of the end of the contract, out of courtesy to the person, and really to prepare yourself for the next round if you don't decide to renew it. That's the first point. I don't know if you have to make a motion for it or whatever, or you have to write it in your rules. The second point the second point I want to make is this: to what Ms. Selectman Riley just said, coming up with some goals. And you talked about bylaws, and I think that's great. There's a couple I'd like to talk about, too. Believe me, one or two of them that I was responsible for. The other thing I would love to see the board take on as a goal is to really review the support that we give to the animal control officer and the people that work on a volunteer basis. There's a lot of work on the background that's volunteer. I don't know what that support would be. I'm not suggesting anything in particular, but I just think that as a worthy goal, what things can we do? There's a lot of volunteer work. I know how little resources these people have, and I know what other towns do. So if the board could review that, Selectman Riley, I think that would be a very worthy thing to review as a go-forward type of goal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, we certainly take that all under advisement and appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Chavo.
Thank you. Thank you.
The only thing we have in correspondence this evening is a request.
It's a thank you.
It doesn't even give dates when they want it, though.
It's a thank you.
It is a thank you, but I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's no, whatever. It's a thank you for providing the Rebels Fast Pitch Softball Team tag days in Raynham. They had some great days, and the generosity of the customers will go a long way towards the team's goals this year. And it was from Mike Moreau And he is the, evidently probably one of the team's
Good.
leaders of some sort.
First one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've never seen one either.
No.
Should frame it.
No, this is the first. We've never gotten a thank you for
Nope.
Tag Days and for the generosity of the people around us. Very good, thank you. Do we have any press time? We do have press tonight. Holy Toledo, this is a first.
Hi, my name is George Shane. I'm from the Taunton Gazette, and I came just for, I was talking a little bit with Mr. Pacheco over here before, and one question I had was, who was the person who voted, I guess, to keep the contract interim, or who, withheld? I know you were saying that you wanted to, extend the contract to make it a full contract.
He wants to know who the selectman was that didn't want to move forward with taking away the acting title.
That would be me.
Okay. I'm not looking to, pin you or anything. I'm just, just wondering. And then another.
We're not going to give you any problems.
Oh, no problem.
Today.
Okay. And another question was just with regards to the open meeting law. Were those changes made recently, or
No.
they've been there? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
Any emergency business?
None.
None? Does anybody else want to say anything? Because now's the time. Go ahead.
No, I'm kidding.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.